Hey guys, hope you're all having a good night. Wanted to make sure I got a quick video together on muscle hypertrophy before I went to bed. We got to the gym. Um, I got to the gym a little bit later tonight, probably around 7, and I got there, and our gym isn't that big, and it was super packed. So I didn't have a heck of a lot of time to get through the workout, and I wanted to make sure I got my cardio done. So I just kind of hit it at a pretty quick pace, and it was a really really good pump. I dropped my weights a little bit, and I got in and out of there with my half an hour of cardio in about an hour and a half, like maybe even a little bit less. So it was different. Wanted to do some filming, but we'll do some filming tomorrow. We'll get you guys some new videos tomorrow. Anyway, in the meantime, muscle hypertrophy. What exactly is muscle hypertrophy? Muscle hypertrophy just means how your muscles grow, like muscle recovery, like building muscle. Um, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions about muscle hypertrophy. You have to lift heavy weights to get big, and women can get big from lifting heavy weights, but it just doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. I'm not going to get super in depth, but I'm going to try to give you like the Cole's Notes versions of how this works and how certain myths are a little bit inaccurate. One of those myths is that you have to lift heavy weight to get big. And I always say to the guys, and don't get me wrong, as a disclaimer, I do go through periods where I lift heavier weights and I'll do heavier sets on certain exercises, particularly with the gains program. But you don't have to lift heavy to put on muscle. And here's why. Like, you guys have all seen the power lifters who are like 140 pounds and they're super lean, super skinny, and they're throwing up like 400 pounds over their head. And it's weird, right? But it's not really weird because it's science. Those power lifters who are able to throw up that weight have basically, without looking muscular and without looking huge, have trained their motor ability to be able to contract their muscles. So they've actually trained their muscles to be able to contract quicker and better, and that just comes from repetitive motion. And through that repetitive motion, they're able to summon more strength, more recruitment from the muscle fibers. And that also kind of explains a little bit about the whole newbie gains thing that Senya spoken about before, where um, a lot of your gains in strength are going to come right off the bat. And that's because you're just learning how to access these muscle fibers and you're just kind of learning how to activate them. So you're going to have a higher proportion of strength gains when you're first starting to lift, as you would, if you've been lifting for a few years, because you've already trained those muscles to contract. So generally speaking, the longer that you're lifting for, the slower that you get those strength gains. Um, anyway, what exactly is muscle growth, right? Muscle growth, we have all these myofibrillar fibers, and that's basically muscle fibers, and they're kind of, they're intertwined like this. And when we go for a really heavy workout, we break them down and they kind of separate a little bit and they get mangled and they shrink. And what happens is that overnight, in particular, when you rest, they start to contract and they repair and they get larger. But you don't necessarily have to lift heavy weights in order for that to happen. Um, Basically, what you have to do is you have to go and you have to break them down. There's 3 ways that you can break them down. Like I said, I'm going to give you the Cole's Notes on the 3 ways that you can actually encourage this to happen. Um, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about satellite cells because that's a really important part of the equation too. So there's 3 ways to actually create muscle, or 3 ways for muscle hypertrophy to occur. One of those of which is muscle tension, which is a higher load of stress on the muscle, and that's typically done with progressively heavier weights. So I always say to my guys, and maybe it's not completely accurate, that lifting heavy weights won't get you big. It'll get you strong, but it'll also get you injured. Because the heavier we go, sometimes we tend to mess up our form a little bit or whatever else. But the truth of the matter is that lifting heavier weights is one of the ways that you can encourage muscle growth. But it's not the only way, and it's not the safest way, and it's not the best way in my opinion. Another way that you can do it is through muscle damage, right? And that's when you're feeling sore. And muscle damage basically occurs when you put stress onto the muscles and they break down. And that's, you can actually, the response to that is actually 24 to 48 hours later. When your it lasts for up to 24 to 48 hours rather, after you've broken those down. And it takes 24 to 48 hours for those things to actually repair. So what that means is basically that your body is releasing inflammation, or an inflammatory response rather. We always talk about inflammation and how it's bad for the body, but in this circumstance, it's good for the body. So you beat the crap out of these muscle fibers and you mangle them up, and they shrink and they get torn apart, and um, and then of course, you go and your body immediately starts releasing inflammatory hormones. And one of the things that they activate are satellite cells. And satellite cells are kind of an interesting concept, because I posted this last time in the group, and I did post a little bit of research on satellite cells. But satellite cells are kind of like the precursor for muscle cells. So it's kind of like, I guess you could call it like the stem cells of muscle fibers, right? And the reason why certain people are genetic hard gainers, and then of course like the genetic freaks, which are a lot of the guys and women that you see on the bodybuilding stage, has a direct proportion to that, to the amount of satellite cells that they're able to activate in their body. And typically speaking, the satellite cell activation is a matter of genetics. So that's why some people put on muscle really, really easily, and then some people put it on really, really slowly. It just has to do with the inflammatory response and activating those satellite cells. So when you're sore, your body immediately starts to flood your muscles with inflammatory hormones, which actually activate muscle growth. So another way that you can actually grow, and this is kind of one of the things that I talk to the guys about a lot, and I know you guys have all seen that terrible movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's talking about the pump. I'm not going to get into it today, but the pumping, you know what I mean? Getting a massive amount of blood flow into your muscles. And I think you guys all know, like, to get a good muscle pump, and I know even the girls, I know you guys have done this, or even the booty pump, let's just say, for example, when all of a sudden you're working really hard, and you don't necessarily need a ton of weight, but volume typically helps, good form typically helps. When you do that, your body starts pumping blood, which causes a swelling around the muscle, from the addition of muscle glycogen, right? And this is the response that actually makes your muscles larger. And of course, it doesn't happen until you rest, but that's a response that actually makes your muscles larger through an activation of pump, right? Through the swelling around those muscle fibers. And the truth of the matter is that the metabolic stress method of creating muscle doesn't necessarily come with an increase of strength, but it does come with an increase of size. So even though you're not necessarily getting stronger, you're getting bigger. And that's kind of like that's one of my main methods. And I think Senya will agree with a lot of these things, that in order to get those nice, muscle heads in men or in women, you need to do high volume all the way. You can sit there and you can pump out sets of really, really heavy weights, but high volume does it just as well. And that's kind of why we incorporate some heavier movements. And that's what periodization is all about. And periodization is a form for periods of, lifting heavier and then lifting lighter, lifting heavier and lifting lighter. And the reason why you're doing that is because sometimes you want to lift a little bit heavier in order to make sure that you're also growing your strength along with your muscle volume, right? Because there would be no point in being a very aesthetic, nice, shapely. For guys, it's going to be, of course, the big jack physique, or for women, it's going to be that kind of the lean muscle carrying, with the nice booty muscles and the back and all the fun stuff that comes along with that. So that's what periodization is all about. And essentially, in order to get bigger muscles, you don't need to lift heavy. You just need to get a really, really good pump. Now, that being said, some of the women are probably thinking here, like, well, if I'm getting a really big pump, I'm going to get huge muscles. But that's not necessarily true either. And the reason for that is basically associated with two hormones, which you guys are, I'm sure, already familiar with, that directly affect our ability to be able to put on muscle. The main hormone, of course, is testosterone, which is substantially more prevalent in men, right? And the reason why you're not going to get huge from doing high volume is because you have a lower percentage of testosterone than men do, right? So what exactly does testosterone do in terms of hypertrophy and the muscle building process? Testosterone increases protein synthesis. So protein synthesis basically means how your body uses protein to create muscle. It also inhibits protein breakdown, and it's also directly responsible for activating a lot of these satellite cells and stimulating other anabolic hormones. So once again, women don't have as many activate. The amount of satellite cells that women are going to be able to activate is not going to be as high as men can activate, and that largely boils down to the amount of testosterone in your system. Another hormone that's widely responsible for muscle growth is IGF-1, otherwise known as insulin growth factor. And what IGF-1 does is it essentially enhances protein synthesis. So it enhances the way that your body uses protein to build muscle. And that's all fine and good. So you go to the gym and you work really hard, and you're doing lots of volume and you're getting a good pump, and you're feeling sore the next day, and you're putting a higher load of stress on your muscles. You're getting stronger kind of every time you go to the gym by doing so, but then you're not growing. Or maybe you're not growing, or maybe you're missing out on something in the equation, and that goes hand in hand with the video I posted in the group, which has to do with rest, right? The recovery part doesn't actually occur while you're working out. It occurs after you work out, and it occurs while you rest. And that's why adequate rest, particularly sleep, is super, super important to the muscle building process and also the fat loss process. So you got to rest. You got to get your sleep, right? And once again, you can't just get your sleep immediately after. You actually have to get your sleep for the next 24 to 48 hours, because that's how long it really takes to repair those muscles. So sleep is a huge part of the equation as well. But anyway, I hope that helps answer a few things. If you guys have questions, post them below in the comments, and we'll continue to answer them. And we're going to be posting a ton more videos in here over the next couple of weeks. I hope you guys all have had an amazing day and had a great workout. And we appreciate you all, and we'll see you soon. Have a good night.